My Necromancer Class Chapter 1, Mana Conduit 1. A strong wind caused a tree branch to beat against Jay's window, stirring him awake. Ah, finally, today is the day of my class awakening, thought Jay as he got out of bed with a spring in his step. He freshened up with some water before making his way downstairs for breakfast. Cooking up a fish, Jay began scoffing it down as he thought about how his life was going to change, getting more enthused with each passing second. For a moment, he gazed out the window at some mist sheep in a nearby field, watching as they phased in and out of the mist, disappearing and reappearing. Since Jay watched the sheep every morning as he ate breakfast alone, he began to feel a little sentimental. This might be the last week I live in this village, he thought with a solemn smile before cleaning up his plate. Today was the day he would get his class, it would open up new opportunities in his life, and allow him to leave this small, quiet village, and nothing was going to stop him from enjoying every moment. The wait is almost over, smiled Jay, thinking he could finally start killing monsters, leveling up, and officially start his journey as an adventurer. But the first step is touching the mana conduit. Getting up from breakfast, Jay left his small house, which was a two-story butchery. He started walking towards the only building in town with a mana conduit, the Adventurers Guild. The mana conduit was a large magic crystal that gave adventurers their class when they touched it. By law, everyone who turned 18 years old that year must place their hand on a mana conduit on the 7th day of the 7th month. This is done in order to gain a class, and no one would ever break this rule, as getting a class benefited everyone. After all, not getting a class would mean you would get no skills, abilities or magic power. Without those, you would have to live a quiet, boring life, a punishment for someone like Jay. Looking at the dark cloudy sky as he walked through the stone streets, he frowned slightly. Ah, just my luck, rain. Better pull over my hood, he thought as he pulled up black hood. The rain sucks, but today is still going to be great though, a little rain won't dampen my mood, he encouraged himself with a chuckle, smiling under his hood. Walking along the muddy path towards the Adventurers Guild, Jay was tempted to curse at the dreary weather as it started to sprinkle a little more heavily now. Meanwhile, more thick, dark clouds gathered overhead, blocking out any chances of sunlight gleaming through. Jay pursed his lips. He would have stayed home if he had the choice, however, if someone failed to reach a mana conduit then they wouldn't get a class. They would be cursed to live a life as a mediocre civilian at the mercy of the beasts, monsters and other races in this magical and medieval world, so on this special day, even snow would not stop Jay. With a sigh, Jay pushed on. Halfway up the mountain now, nearly there. I hope my practice with the knife gives me a cool swordsman class. He thought to himself. Surely the system will take into account that I've been using a knife as a butcher for the last few years. Ooh, maybe it will even give me a rare passive ability. His eyes became more excited. Jay walked faster thinking about the possibilities, excited about becoming a powerful swordsman and having legendary adventures. No more was life going to be mundane, making money as a butcher to get by. After Jay's father moved to another village to start a second butcher shop, he took over the business here in Losla. There was little contact between Jay and his father, who may as well have been dead since Jay never received as much as a letter from him. Part of him felt abandoned. Jay cast these sad thoughts aside and kept walking, each step bringing him closer to a new life. The muddy road to the Adventurer Association curved up around a hill which overlooked the village, dodging rocky outcrops as it led to the Adventurers Association gate. There were a few other people walking up the dirt road too. Some spoke to each other and walked together, but most kept to themselves, the dark weather suppressing any chance of a warm conversation. The hill was large and the path was long, causing Jay to start sweating slightly as he started to pant. I'm pretty unfit, he thought as he started huffing. I should have started training or something. Oh well, he shook his head. Suddenly, a deep man's voice called out from behind, startling most of the young adventurers on the road. A large bulky man clad in armor was riding a horse ahead of a carriage. Make way for nobility, he called out, his raspy voice had the airy authority of a war-torn veteran. With a short sword strapped to his waist, he rode on a black glade horse ahead of a luxurious carriage as he continued to call out. The man didn't even turn his head towards Jay, expecting anyone to move at his call. The safety of the young noble was clearly his only priority. The knight was overqualified for his position. Anyone could tell that the knight was bored just by looking at him, yet he still emitted a kind of dangerous pressure when he came closer. As he rode past, a trail of steam followed him, his sword sheath releasing steam when droplets of rain landed on it. Must have a ruby gem. Hey, must be nice being rich, thought Jay secretly, not risking to say it out loud. In this world, gems gave weapons attributes. In this instance, there was a ruby gem socketed into the short sword, which gave the sword +3 fire damage. A passive effect was that it felt warm to the touch. When drawn, the sword would glow red hot, able to carve through flesh like paper and only leaving a cauterized wound behind. A wound such as this would block instantaneous healing abilities. One would have to cut off the cauterization before even attempting to heal it. It was common to see these gems socketed into larger objects, but to put them into smaller objects like swords required great skill. The fire attribute had to be channeled into the blade and not into the handle, lest it burn the wielder. This is what made the weapons so expensive. Generally the smaller a socketed object, the more expensive it was. Jay did his best to move to the side of the path, getting out of the way of the rich knight. The hill was steep at the edge of the road. It had been built up to make a slightly wider path, though over time it had degraded. Standing on the edge of the road to give way to the carriage, Jay realized that he didn't have enough room, but it was too late to do anything about it. Having no choice but to dodge the oncoming carriage, he stepped backwards towards the edge. Suddenly the side of the path crumbled and he started to slip. The rain helped in making a bad situation worse as it was all turning to slippery mud by now. Shit, Jay attempted to plant his foot firmly on the ground, but the mud caused Jay to just slip further down. He began to lose balance as he yelled, hoping someone would hear him, and someone did. A chuckle came from the carriage, and as Jay fell, a mocking smirk flashed at him ever so briefly through the carriage's curtains. Wow, it's like they're almost glad that I'm being pushed off the road and into the mud, little bastard. He thought as he tried to gain his balance, yet unsuccessfully. Jay fell over onto his shoulder as he slid a little way down the side of the hill. You asshole in your shitty carriage, Jay yelled, gritting his teeth in anger as he slid down. He only began picking up more speed and sliding faster in the rain and mud. Spotting a shrub as he slid down, he grabbed at it to stop himself from sliding further. Grah! He grasped the small bush with all his strength, yet neither Jay or the bush came out unscathed. Jay finally came to a stop as half of the plant's roots were pulled up. His hand began stinging as it turned red, hurting more than his shoulder now as he just stripped away half of the leaves from the plant. Using the shrub as balance, he stood up slowly, yet was quickly filled with anger. Damn it, will they even let me in now? I'm so filthy, they will think I'm a beggar, and that little bastard in the carriage was basically laughing at me. Prick! He snapped in frustration, clenching his fist as he noticed the carriage wasn't even there anymore. He didn't even stop to help. Little fucking bastard. His brows furrowed in anger, swearing through his clenched jaw as he looked at the brown slide he made down the hill. Walking back up the muddy hill to get to the road, Jay's anger still seethed, yet this only caused him to lose his concentration, and with it, his balance. Fucker. Little carriage bastard fucker. Oh, wait. Shit. Once more, he fell backwards. Shit, she. The back of his head landing squarely on a rock, and Jay instantly lost consciousness. His unconscious body continued sliding down the hill for a moment before stopping near some bushes. Sadly for Jay, no one saw him fall or even heard him yell in the pouring rain. He was alone, knocked unconscious and caught in some bushes. A silver crow shocked Jay awake, flying away when Jay's eyes opened widely. Jay sat up quickly, trying to make himself look more lifelike as he realized the crow was about to start eating him as if he was some roadkill. It was still close to winter, and at this point Jay was shivering, his clothes drenched with rain. He couldn't tell how long he had been unconscious as it was still overcast, but it didn't matter very much right now. He was freezing. I need to get warm. So cold. Need warmth. His teeth chattering, his lips blue, and his fingers white. He could hardly form sentences. Survival instincts kicked in as Jay started to jog to the village inn. He would have gone home, but he knew that his shivering hands wouldn't have been able to start a fire. I am so hungry, so thirsty. How long was I knocked out? He asked himself as he jogged, trying to warm himself up. It was still overcast and early in the morning when he finally made it to the only inn in the village. Stumbling through the wooden door of the Snake Raven Inn, Jay quickly walked towards the innkeeper standing behind the bar ready to place his order. However, the middle-aged bald man with a twirling moustache took the initiative to speak first. Hello. I'm Devon. How can I help? The innkeeper asked, squinting at Jay as he wondered whether he should kick this dirty mud-covered bum out or not. I'm not getting paid enough for this shit, the innkeeper thought, looking at the tracks of mud Jay was making through his establishment before realizing he was his own boss. Oh, one room please, and a hot bath immediately. I'm freezing, Jay said through his chattering teeth. Sure. That will be 25 gold. The innkeeper eyed Jay's waist for a coin pouch. It will cost you more if you stay for longer though. And about your bath, it will cost 5 gold for the ruby bath which heats up water instantly. Otherwise we normally heat up water over the fire which would take quite some time. The innkeeper explained, casually peering at the thick mud on Jay's clothes. Would you like laundry service too? For 5 gold. Obviously I want the fucking ruby bath. I'm literally shivering in front of you, you absolute foo, Jay thought for a moment before he exhaled angrily and then smiled with dead eyes, replying with an almost sarcastic tone. Yes, I would like my clothes washed and I would like the ruby tub too, please. He said through gritted teeth. Sure. 35 gold, Devon said before he called out for his employee. Tamara. We have a customer. Get the hot tub filled right away. Yes sir, a young female voice sounded from a room behind the bar. Jay paid 35 gold as a young woman came out from a door next to the bar. Room 3, but take him to the ruby bath first, Devon said as he took the gold coins and went back to cleaning glasses. I wonder what they did to the new recruit to make him come back like this. Devon thought as he shrugged, putting a clean glass down and grabbing another to polish. It was not the morning as Jay had thought. He had been unconscious all day. Devon merely assumed this was some sort of training. Old guild leader Sully must be experimenting this year. He shrugged with a smile. Oh well, not my problem. My Necromancer Class Chapter 2, Mana Conduit 2. Tamara led Jay down a hallway to a room with the ruby bath in the center, gesturing to Jay to enter the room. The bathtub was as big as any other bathtub, yet with a small ruby gem socketed into its base, a metal cage covering the gem to stop petty thieves. Tamara pointed to the corner of the room. There's a basket there to put your dirty clothes in, along with a change of clothes on that shelf. I've left a towel and some soap there too. If you need anything just call out down the hallway and I'll hear you. Jay nodded as Tamara closed the door, leaving Jay alone in the room. Checking that the door was locked, Jay turned around to start undressing as he noticed wisps of steam dancing on top of the water. Enticed by the warmth, he hurriedly took his clothes off and threw them in the general direction of the basket before hopping into the bath. At first it was hot, but soon his skin adapted to the heat and it felt comfortable. As his muscles untensed themselves from the shivering, he could finally relax. 5 gold well spent, he smiled in delight. Suddenly, he panicked. Grabbing the sides of the bathtub, he froze. I still need to reach the mana conduit. Shit. Jumping out of the bath, he grabbed the towel and wrapped it around himself. He remembered that the sun was about to set as he was shocked awake by that crow, so he's really cutting it close. Opening the door, he yelled, Tamara. Hearing footsteps, Tamara appeared. Yes. I need to get to the Adventurers Association as soon as possible. Can you please request a carriage for me? Jay blurted out. Yeah sure. Isn't it closed today? Tamara said quizzically. No. Why would it be closed? Well, yesterday was the 7th of the 7th, and they will have a lot of paperwork to go through after all the 18-year-olds have their classes now, so they're normally closed on the 8th of the 7th. Jay felt his heart squeeze tightly as he unconsciously held his breath. Yes, yesterday. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Never mind. Closing the door slowly, Jay completely forgot about Tamara standing there. Thankfully the door closed before his towel fell down. Standing naked in the room staring at the closed door, a few moments passed as reality caught up with Jay. I missed it, my one opportunity to escape this hole. How? Why? Gritting his teeth, he began to get angry as he slowly walked back to the bath and got in, not wasting the water. I'm going to be a fucking butcher forever H. Ha. Ha ha. Ha ha ha. He thought about the new adventurers, a root of jealousy growing in his heart as they were now training and learning about the system and their classes. What's that word they say? Oh yeah, status, he said bitterly with eyes half closed and a defeated smile, knowing he will be a butcher forever. Less than, Necromancer level 1, greater than. HP, 45 45ths. MP, 25 25ths. Strength, 15. Dexterity, 25. Vitality, 15. Energy, 25. Less than, skills, greater than. Raise feeble creature level 1. Class utility, passive. Wah. With a furrowed brow and half-opened eyes, Jay took some time to process what he was seeing. Rereading it again, then a third time, Jay felt his heart jerk him awake before he paused in shock. I'm a necromancer, he yelled to himself as he sat in the bath. Isn't this supposed to be a monster class? Looking around, he felt a strange mix of embarrassment, excitement and fear, but most of all, he was thankful no one heard him. How? Why? I just wanted to be a swordsman. Shit, even a pugilist class would have been fine. Even a fucking monk class, I would accept that too. I've been using a knife most of my life working in the butchery after all. Aren't I supposed to get a class that suits me? Jay thought about why he would get a weird class like this, before realizing he spent a lot of time looking at dead corpses, cutting them, hanging them, gutting them. Analyzing the meat and learning the bone structure of many different kinds of forest animals. A slight feeling of dread came over Jay as it dawned on him. Yeah okay, that makes sense I guess. Kinda perverted when I think about it like that though, he reasoned. A necromancer, I have only heard rumors of these types of monsters. Aren't most of them powerful undead skeletons? He wondered, looking at his hands. He then felt silly because obviously he was still alive. While he was happy to have a class, he didn't know what to feel, fear of being hunted down for having a monster class. Happiness that he's not a butcher anymore. Excitement for the future adventures he would have. Though the strongest of these emotions was currently fear. Should I tell someone? I guess I have to reason at the moment, but I should build trust with someone before telling them in private. In the meantime, I will have to pretend I'm a support class with only a self-buffing ability, maybe a slight speed buff or something, since my dexterity and energy are high. He stroked his chin as he sat quietly in the bath. Well, at least this means I'm kind of an adventurer now, he smiled, trying to look on the bright side. I guess I can test my abilities today and check out the Adventurer Guild tomorrow to see current quests. Or maybe find some low-level monster zones or dungeons. Jay realized the association would still be closed for quests due to the rush of new adventurers from today, so he had time to plan for now. Cleaning the mud off his skin, he got out of the bath, put on a provided gown and went to sleep. Jay slept for the rest of the day as he recovered, only waking up early in the morning the next day. Jay changed into his clean clothes waiting outside his room and left the inn. Walking along the street, he thought about his new skill, Raise Feeble Creature. A notification appeared before his eyes. Less than, Raise Feeble Creature Level 1, greater than. Imbue a skeleton with necrotic energy, raising it to fight for you. 0/1 raised. Raise. Cost 5 mana, plus 3 mana per level of Feeble Creature. It sounds kind of cool, I guess. I wonder how strong it will be. Jay thought, wandering through the cobblestone streets. It didn't take long before he found an opportunity for his only skill, a desiccated rat corpse in a quiet alley. The rats in Losler were large, about the size of a cat. Women hated him the most due to the rats being able to prey on babies and sometimes even toddlers. He walked up to the dead rat casually, then checked the alley, making sure no one was looking. He pointed at the corpse, casting his spell. Raise. 20% of his mana left his body in one go, and Jay felt a little dizzy. Some green gas formed around his hand and drifted over the corpse. The green gas circled around the corpse but now seemed to be waiting a moment. Raising a brow as he stared at the corpse with the green cloud around it, he was wondering what was happening. Hey, are you gonna do anything? Can you hurry up? He wanted the skill to go faster before someone entered the alley. Suddenly, the green mist entered the corpse through its mouth. It was like it was being inhaled. So I guess I'll get an undead rat as a buddy. It'll be fine as long as it doesn't touch me, thought Jay, not wanting to even smell the large rat corpse. Desiccated rat corpse is disgusting. Even a living rat is pretty filthy. Suddenly, the rat corpse pulsated, its chest rising up and down as its skin roiled, and boils of fat and pus appeared on the surface of its skin. Amazed, Jay stared at it, and then before his widened eyes, it suddenly exploded. Bits of flesh flaked everywhere, a lot covering Jay, some landing near his lips. Wanting to scream in anger and disgust, he didn't dare open his mouth in case some rotting flesh entered it. He quickly wiped the pieces of flesh off his face. Fuck. I want to die. Fuck this. I'll be a butcher for life. I don't even care anymore. This is the worst day ever. No, actually, the worst 2 days since I was knocked out for nearly a full day thanks to that smug prick in the carriage. Wanting to die after having desiccated rat flesh land on his face, Jay made a mental note to stand back after casting this skill next time. Looking at the corpse, he realized that only the flesh, hair, muscles and organs were gone, splattered all over the alley around him. What remained was simply the bones floating in a cloud of green mist. The mist wrapped around the bones as they shifted and morphed. The cartilage cracked and popped as the rat bones reshaped themselves into a humanoid skeleton creature with a hunchback and tiny horns on its head. The green mist was solidifying, acting like a jelly at the joints of the bones. The creature was about the size of a small child. It had long spindly bone fingers with tiny claws at the end. If Jay were to guess what it was, he would naturally think it was a goblin skeleton. 2 hollow eyes with tiny green glowing spheres floating in the middle of the eye sockets looked up at Jay from the rat skull with anticipation, as if to say, I'm ready to kill. What can I kill? Where is my target? With its creepy spindly-like hands ready to slash. Freaking out, Jay wanted the creature to get away from him, and as if it read his thoughts. The green jelly on the joints of the creature all dissipated back into the mist and disappeared while the bones crumbled back onto the ground, some turning to ash and blowing away, while others turned back into what looked like normal rat bones. Freaky. Analyzing the bones, Jay gained some understanding of the process. So it seems like my power is semi-autonomous. It responds to my thoughts immediately but also can act independently when I don't focus. Interesting. The creature was made up of bones which clearly didn't belong to a rat, especially since it increased in size, and some of these bones turned into ash. Perhaps that's part of my magic too, to fill in the gaps where a creature is lacking. Jay squinted at the remaining bones. Maybe that's why I can only do smaller, feeble creatures at the moment. Because I would need to fill in more gaps for the larger ones. I guess I should level up quickly and find out. I would like to test this on a dead bird and other corpses too, to see if I get the same creature or a different one. Jay considered combining different creature corpses as he walked to the Adventurer Association. If a bird corpse made a different creature, surely combining a few different corpses would make something stronger. Of course, he will need to find a few different corpses first. So far, he has only managed to find a desiccated rat. Well, I guess I can kill something in one of the Adventurers Association's quests. He thought with a sly smile as he attempted his second trip to the association. My Necromancer Class Chapter 3, New Blood. A town guard walked by an ordinary alley, turning his head as he noticed a vile smell. Walking towards the rancid odor, he approached cautiously, gripping his spear tighter. He knew this smell well. It was death. He quickly found the source of the smell, and it only got worse as he got closer. At first, he was shocked. It was like a blossoming flower of desiccated flesh surrounding a pile of ash-white bones. He couldn't hold back his vomit. Leaving the alley, he wondered if he should report it or not. I won't bother reporting it. It's only a rat after all. Probably just some new adventurers testing out their skills. Interesting skill though, explosive magic maybe. I hope I never cross them in the wild, he thought. A shiver ran up his spine as he had an instant flashback of what he just witnessed. On the other side of town, Jay suddenly had the urge to grin mischievously. Weird, he shrugged. It was early morning, not afternoon as Jay had previously thought. He knew he missed his chance to access a mana conduit and acquire his class, yet he had become a necromancer. However, this wasn't a problem. He would still need to register as an adventurer, and they would find out his class if he did. Thoughts kept flashing through Jay's head. Will I be rejected for not being there to touch the mana conduit? Will they even realize I wasn't there? Will they assume I don't have a class, and hence, cannot participate in quests or training? He frowned slightly. I guess I should be more scared of them discovering my class and executing me on the spot. He frowned. Jay simply had to lie his way into the guild, then he would get access to all the dungeon locations, quests, and other services. He slowly walked to the guild. The sun had a comfortable warmth and the early morning air was crisp, which Jay appreciated as he made his way around the dirt trail curving up the mountain. At least something was lifting his mood. His excitement for becoming an adventurer was gone, but remaining a lone butcher was out of the question. The Adventures Association came into sight. It was more like a small castle rather than a functional organization building. A wooden palisade wall surrounded the compound, along with an occasional large rock or boulder making up part of the wall. The nearby fir trees had been cut to provide vision, as well as to construct the 10 meters walls. The gate arch was composed of large floating boulders, each of them rippling with a pale blue aura and deep blue glowing veins which kept them floating, ready to deposit them into the gate gap if need be. Who needs an iron gate when you can simply enchant some boulders? Jay thought the fancy floating boulder gate was betrayed by the wooden palisade walls around the compound. However, it was situated near a small town after all, and he didn't expect much in the first place. Small villages like his were not even taken into consideration in regards to defense or war, so they wouldn't receive any sort of military budget. Besides, the country was only at war with one of the other 6 races, and the war front was on the north side of the country. Jay's village, Losla, was situated on the deep southwestern side of the continent, where nothing exciting ever happens. It was more like a retirement village. Approaching the gate, Jay saw a familiar face. It was Paul, a regular customer of the butcher shop. Hey, this will be easy, Jay thought to himself as his lips began to curl. Hey Paul, how are you? Jay waved. Yeah, good mate, you're here to start your classes, huh? What did you get? Jay feigned a smile. Melee, I'm a swordsman. Pretty keen to get started, he lied with a nod. As they were chatting, a few other people lined up behind Jay, while some just continued walking past and entered through the gate. Noticing the queue, Paul decided to cut the chatter and return to his duties. Good on ya, mate. Well, the melee instructor is right over there. He's a bit loud, but he means well. I hope it goes well. See you later, mate. He gestured to Jay to enter. Thanks, Paul, I'll catch you around. Jay held back a nervous sweat as well as a smile of delight, resulting in a straight face. He wasn't used to lying, but successfully doing this also gave him a strange feeling of elation and excitement. Jay felt like he was better, even superior to his fellow man, despite being level 1 while Paul was level 24. Wow, I should lie all the time, Jay carelessly thought. Walking through the floating stone gate, Jay felt a little cautious as the huge stones could crush him into a meat paste. Thankfully, they didn't respond to his Necromancer class at all. The whole courtyard area was about the size of a park. A cobblestone path led to the main building a few hundred meters away, and this was where Jay headed. The main building was a 3-story tall wooden barrack, with a large round cobblestone tower protruding from the back left corner of the compound. A large black window was on the top floor, looking over the courtyard. Most of the courtyard was dirt with small patches of grass that had been trampled over the years. It was filled with aspiring adventurers being trained in their various disciplines, melee, ranged and mana craft. There were about 300 recruits all up, the majority of them being a melee-type class. The new recruits had bright, excited eyes and sunny looks on their faces, even as they were yelled at by their new trainers. They were being told to forget everything they knew previously about their respective disciplines. In this way, Jay stood out as he was the only new recruit who had a look of seriousness, similar to the veteran trainers. Little did they know it was because he was currently hiding something, though most would assume he simply didn't want to be there or wasn't happy with his class. Among the 3 disciplines were subclasses, e.g., melee had swords, axes, spears, each with its own respective abilities, health and mana pool sizes. People could learn different disciplines to evolve their class and merge them, e.g. a melee class such as swordsman could learn mana craft, and evolve the Swordsman class into Spell Sword, Mage Slayer, or even a Quint Blade, if they had other prerequisites. New abilities could also be acquired through personal testing, discovery, or finding a rare skill scroll. There was also a chance of attaining a unique class. These classes were rare, having a 0.7% chance of acquiring. In the group of new recruits and aspiring adventurers, only 2 people so far had attained a unique class, or so they thought. The unique classes were usually considered special, but were not always blessings, for example the Ornamentalist class. This class was a mage craftsman type class which had a peculiar ability to craft objects which would follow the current owner around. Though not very practical, it would creep some people out when they unknowingly purchased one of these goods. A victim of such a merchant would be sitting in a pub on a rainy night, enjoying a drink quietly in the warmth of the tavern. Staring out at the rain, he wondered when the storm would end. Suddenly a flash of lightning strikes and his tripto ornament in the shape of a tiki doll's head would appear in the window he was looking through, making him figuratively shit himself and ruin his calm mood with high blood pressure. Buyer beware. The 2 unique class adventurers were not present at practice. It seemed they were given special lessons, or shipped off to a more advanced guild in a thoroughly developed city. Jay mimicked confidence in his walk as to not draw suspicion while he approached the main building and entered the lobby. There was no one at reception because everyone working here would be busy handling the paperwork from yesterday. Oh yeah, Jay pursed his lips. As went to the exit, he noticed a colorful map on the wall. It was a dungeon board showing all the closest dungeons to the village. This was probably only meant to be seen by the new adventurers after enough training. He was level 1, so he knew he probably shouldn't bother looking, but he did anyway. It wouldn't hurt to know, he smiled. Looking at the map, he found a single level 1 dungeon, Stink Rat Marsh. Perhaps they get people to train up in the courtyard so they don't have to go there. Obviously marshes stink, and rats stink, so Stink Rat Marsh must be an absolute shithole. It would be a stain in any adventurer's memory to start here. But I suppose I have no choice. Jay sighed. The less attention I draw, the better, and there will be no one there to witness my class in action. A small smile appeared on his face, thinking about his bone goblin skeleton tearing the rats to pieces. There were various other dungeons on the map, but they were not instance dungeons, meaning anyone would be able to go into the dungeon and find you there. Whereas the instance dungeons would create separate pockets of reality in which only you and your party could enter. Jay added the location to his map, along with a level 5 dungeon named Wolf's Quarry. Gosh, I wonder what kind of monsters will be at Wolf's Quarry, he chuckled to himself in the lobby. His poor attempts at humorous sarcasm had no restraint. Thankfully, it fell of deaf ears as no one was in the lobby today. Jay decided to grind to level 4 in Stink Rat Marsh, then head to the quarry to level up some more before returning a few days later. He thought that hopefully by then he will have a better chance at succeeding when he would have to lie about his adventurer paperwork being lost. I may as well get some training in while I'm here, he thought as he exited the building. Looking around the courtyard, he noticed people with swords, clubs, shields and hatchets were on his right, sparring with each other while some of them attacked helpless training dummies. Others nearby did push-ups and sit-ups under the guise of their trainer. Perhaps they're being punished for losing, Jay reckoned. On the left side were people with javelins, daggers, whips and bows. They were all attacking targets from their respective distances. Some of the more talented rangers would attempt to attack wooden birds that an assistant mage had summoned while the ranged trainer looked on, periodically giving pointers to the slightly more inept. The assistant mage looked bored as her whole job was to collect scraps of wood from the melee training dummies, add magic to them, and convert them into wooden birds which she sent to fly around the archery range. Damn, some magic sure is cool. Sucks to do something so boring with it, though, Jay wearily smiled, continuing to look around. I wonder where the mana craft training is being held, Jay thought before noticing in the far right corner. Beyond the 150-strong mass of melee disciples was a small garden where people were sitting as still as statues. There were about 60 of them, sitting cross-legged while the trainer sitting cross-legged floating. A few small rocks seemed to defy gravity around him. As soon as Jay looked at him, he suddenly heard a voice in his head. Stop being lazy and start training, recruit. The voice was blunt and to the point. Jay shivered and immediately looked away from the trainer, hopefully breaking mind contact, or whatever that spell was. He took 3 steps forward, pretending to listen to the voice's instructions as he considered where he should go. He had to think fast so as to not look suspicious. Desperately wanting to go to the mana craft area, he knew he would not be able to demonstrate his skills, which were grotesque to say the least, not to mention they would get him into trouble or even killed. Jay went with his original plan and decided to join the melee training, as even a simpleton could do push-ups, and he had been cutting up meat since he was a kid, so he was good enough with a knife. As he walked away from the main building, he felt a pair of eyes as sharp as daggers staring straight at his back from the building behind him. He felt a cold sweat as the tangible pressure mounted on him. Deciding not to turn around, he resolutely made his way to the melee area. As he went to grab a wooden short sword, his hand was rudely slapped away. Just what do you think you're doing? This has to be earned, a snooty voice resounded with vitriol in Jay's face. I'm here for training. You have to earn it, he said with a sneer. You can't just start with a wooden sword, you don't deserve it yet. Jay realized this was the same prick in the carriage who smiled gleefully as he tumbled down the hill into the mud. The exact same little shit who smirked at him as he fell. Knowing he couldn't smack someone who was a rich noble brat, Jay simply clenched his jaw as he death stared at the melee trainer, letting his rage out a little. The melee trainer had heightened senses compared to most, and immediately responded as he sensed the passive threat level rising. You there, he pointed at the brat, quit talking and get back to sparring. And you, he pointed at Jay and glared for a moment. You're late so you're doing push-ups, jogging, then dummy training. No sparring today since you're late. Some spit left his mouth as he screamed, we don't tolerate tardiness. The noble brat sneered with a smug smile as he went back to the sparring area. Jay immediately felt thankful for the trainer, even though he was yelling at Jay with a vein popping out of his head. He went to the push-up area and began working out. Jay began doing push-ups with the other recruits as the trainer continued to bark at them. As he began working out, he was amazed at how his own body now was not tired in the slightest. The only thing that changed for him was that his energy status went down from 25 to 23, even though he had just done 200 push-ups. The standard training regime for new melee recruits was to do 200 push-ups, jog around the outside of the compound twice, and then repeat until the instructor was pleased. However, as Jay began to get up, the instructor winced and screamed at him once more. I didn't say you were finished. You're doing 400 to make up for being late. He doesn't need to embarrass me like this. This is all that noble douche's fault anyway, basically pushing me down the hill yesterday, he thought as he gritted his teeth in frustration, deciding to channel his rage into his push-ups. After the first rage-filled push-up, Jay instantly received a notification. New passive skill unlocked. Less than, stress response, greater than. You get stronger when you're angry, and angry when you exercise. Plus 5% melee damage bonus when stressed or angry. Sweet, Jay smiled as his mood turned positive again and he lost the passive buff. The trainer seemed angry as he saw Jay enjoying what was meant to be a punishment, and Jay continued to smirk to himself as he finished the extra 200 push-ups. Hopefully being an underdog always plays out like this. After the push-ups came the running. He had to do 4 laps around the compound, lowering his energy to 17/25. Thankfully, he did unlock another passive, though he wasn't that impressed. Less than, running level 1, greater than. You can run faster, further, and use less energy doing so. Plus 1% speed. Coming back to the trainer, he was greeted with a light smile. Good job recruit, take a wooden weapon and start on the dummies. The trainer seemed less annoyed now that Jay had put in the effort without complaining, he seemed to respect hard work. Jay was encouraged, and happily went back to the weapon rack and grabbed a wooden short sword. Jay smirked proudly as he noticed the brat glance at him before going back to sparring another recruit, not willing to test the trainer's booming voice. Jay happily went to one of the training dummies which was closest to the Manacraft garden. He started sparring lightly, and whenever he heard the Manacraft instructor teach the lucky few in the Manacraft group, he approached the dummy. Pretending to inspect his damage as he tried to glean any scraps of Manacraft training he could get, listening attentively. Twist and pull the rope in, making it a part of yourself. Imagine you are the tree, make your bark, your shell, stronger. It sounds like some bullshit a fortune teller would say, he thought with a raised brow. Nevertheless, he committed each and every piece to memory as he pretended to analyze the training dummy nearby. After a few hours of training, Jay leveled up, gaining 5 attribute points to spend. He realized that his base class attributes had most points in energy, which increased mana, so he put them all into energy, raising it to 30 and his mana pool to 39. His dexterity was quite high, but he assumed it was due to his skills with the butchering knives rather than his class, but he couldn't be sure as he checked his status. Less than, Necromancer level 2, greater than. HP, 48/48. MP, 39/39. Strength, 15. Dexterity, 25. Vitality, 15. Energy, 20/30. Less than, skills, greater than. Raise feeble creature level 1. Stress response, passive. Class utility, passive. Running level 1, passive. Awesome. I'll have an easier time when I visit the dungeon, Jay smiled in satisfaction. After training till midday, a bell sounded from somewhere in the main building and the recruits were dismissed, told to come back tomorrow at sunbreak for more lessons. Jay looked at his trainer who nodded back, then began making his way home for some lunch. As he left, he noticed a familiar guard on the way out, Paul. How was your training, mate? Ready for tomorrow? It was okay, it seems like they drill us pretty hard but I think they mean the best for us. I'll get used to it, Jay answered, tactfully ignoring the second question. Paul lightly chuckled, hey, they won't let it get easy, mate. If you get used to it they'll just make it harder, He smiled with a nod, but hang in there, it'll be worth it, and you'll be glad for going through it someday. Yeah, Jay nodded and looked to the ground knowingly. I'll keep coming back, don't worry. Anyway, I'm exhausted, so I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, that's fair enough, see you tomorrow, mate. Jay walked down the hill as the douche brat's carriage whizzed past once again, this time, without Jay slipping. Asshole, he thought. I'll outlevel him soon enough by getting a head start on these dungeons tonight. I'll leave this loser in my past where he belongs. Jay grinned. After walking home sprightly, Jay cooked himself up some sausages and tomatoes seasoned with ground bond tussle root, and enjoyed his meal. Surprised, he noticed he got a passive buff from consuming the bond tussle root. Mana regen buff 1%, lasts for 1 hour. Oh, how did I not know about this? Jay was surprised. Shouldn't this be common knowledge? In all his years of working as a butcher he had never heard anything about this herb. Well, I guess most adventurers leave this hole when they level up enough, and food buffs are probably only effective to high-level people anyway. I suppose it didn't affect me before since I wasn't an adventurer. Oh well, I'll take it, he shrugged, scoffing down the rest of his food. Planning ahead, he packed some extra bond tussle root into his knapsack along with water, mushrooms and some wild nuts to snack on, some small easy-to-eat rations. Well, time to make my way to Stinky Stink Rat Marsh. He smiled. My Necromancer Class Chapter 4, How Absolutely Delightful. Jay took his cooking knife with him as he went to leave. Something will be better than nothing, I guess. As Jay walked out the butchery, he left a sign hanging on the doorknob, "Be back after lunch." Of course, he wouldn't be back after lunch. He chuckled thinking about the people lining up only to lose patience and leave, but Jay didn't care, he was an adventurer now. Sometime soon, he would leave this city behind and get rich killing monsters for a living. He was quite a sadistic person in this way. With a spring in his step and a sunny smile, he began walking down the cobblestone street. Checking his map to confirm the direction of the Stink Rat Marsh dungeon, he abruptly stopped, turned around, and began walking back the way he was coming from, this time in the correct direction. Jay blushed as he hoped no one noticed. His first mistake as an adventurer was embarrassing to say the least. Imagining his melee trainer bursting a blood vessel if he heard of this, Jay chuckled, he will never know. It was about 15 minutes before Jay reached the south side of the village. On his way out he noticed a merchant arguing with a stable boy. Not caring for the argument, Jay continued to walk by as he gazed at the merchant's caravan. Wow, those are some nice weapons. I guess he must be here to cash in on the new adventurers. Hey, but I won't need a weapon with my class, Jay snickered quietly to himself. The merchant noticed someone seemingly laughing at his stock. He paused, and gave Jay an obvious fake smile. Hello sir, you like what you see? Well, you're gonna have to wait till tomorrow. Ha ha ha. I'll have the booth set up by lunchtime. The short fat merchant let out a bellowing laugh from behind his moustache. Jay inspected the merchant. Bertram, level 13. HP 100%. MP 87%. The only details Jay could get was his name, level, and current health and mana percentages. This was the same for everyone. You would either need to party up to see someone's class, and their actual health, mana, or touch a mana conduit. Jay shrugged at the merchant's teasing and left as Bertram pulled a pipe out and began to smoke it. Periodically puffing smoke out as he went back to micromanaging the stable boy, who at this point had a red face and looked like he was about to tear up. Poor kid, Jay thought. The cobblestone path ended and turned to a patchy dirt grass path as he walked away from the village. It was nearly the middle of winter, no flowers were blooming and most of the trees in the surrounding forest were missing their leaves. Though it didn't get cold enough to snow in this part of the country, much of the vegetation still suffered through the winter. Jay checked his map as he walked. Okay, just a little further on the path, then I have to cut through the forest to the southwest. After making his way down the path, he turned and began working his way through the forest's vegetation. It was quiet as he walked through the winter forest, a light breeze waved through the trees, the only sound coming from the odd twig he snapped underfoot. Approaching the map marker with expectation, Jay was confused. What? Where is the dungeon? Jay expected a cave or perhaps a crystal to teleport him, yet what he found was a small brown pond surrounded by head-high grass. The water was murky, with lily pads scattered throughout, quite contrasting to the surrounding firwood forest. Jay walked around the pond as he checked his map, but the marker kept pointing directly into the pond. Fine, you win. I'll walk into the filthy pond and get my shoes wet, then head back to town with wet shoes and disappointment. He gritted his teeth in utter frustration. After sinking his shoes into the mud and the water reaching knee-high, a notification appeared before his eyes. Enter Stink Rat Marsh Level 1 Dungeon. Yes, no. Oh. Jay was pleasantly confused, but still, he accepted the dungeon invitation. The wind swirled around him, and for a moment, Jay couldn't breathe. Before he realized it, he was suddenly sucked down under the water and into the mud. anyone looking at this would think he was just pulled under the water by an ancient eldritch monster. Suddenly, Jay was ejected from the mud again, as if being vomited out from the earth itself. You have entered Stink Rat Marsh Level 1. Unlocked dungeon, you may leave at any time. Landing in the same murky water again, he was assaulted by a foul smell and another notification. Stink debuff applied. Persists until you leave the dungeon. Stink. You are distracted by a horrendous smell, minus 5% dexterity. Hey, 5% is nothing to someone as low level as me, Jay scoffed as he examined his surroundings. He really thought being low level was something to brag about. The air was sticky, humid and thick. It was warm, and definitely not winter anymore. Around him were decaying trees, waist-high grass and black murky ponds littering the black mud landscape. While walking to drier ground, his feet produced bubbles with every step, the bubbles adding to the stink. This would definitely deter anyone from becoming an adventurer, he grimaced as he held his nose, though it did nothing to stop the putrid smell. Jay began exploring, avoiding murky ponds and bubbling swamps. Soon enough, he came to an enormous log. Jay approached the side of this gigantic decaying log. It was only getting bigger as he came closer, and as it was finally within spitting distance, he realized even a carriage could fit inside the log if it were hollowed out. It was as tall as a house. Wondering how he would get over, he looked to each side. The log appeared to go off into the distance forever. Must be some sort of soft lock to stop idiots getting in. Or just really drunk people. Looking right, he spotted another decaying log which had fallen onto the huge log, forming a ladder of sorts, though its base was submerged in another murky pond. Jay sighed, damn, let's get this over with. He walked back into the murky brown water, frowning as he felt the slightly colder water enter his shoes again and more bubbles being produced with each step. Reaching the log, he found that it was stripped of bark. The wood had turned black after absorbing the muck over the years, and it was beyond dead. You slippery bastard, Jay said as he spread more water over it, though no muck washed off. The slimy surface seemed to be a part of the log now. Jay attempted to crouch walk up it, but this was a sad mistake. After getting about halfway up, he lost balance and fell face first into the murky water below. He couldn't scream or the muck may enter his mouth. He quickly clambered out of the water, causing another stir of stink bubbles. Wiping his face in frustration, he used his shirt to wipe his lips and spat. Fuck, he yelled through a clenched jaw. He felt like his face was grimacing since he was in here, but in this situation, he realized he could break through his own limits and grimace even harder. Perhaps his nose would implode. I'm sick of this place already, it's no wonder no one would come here. For a moment he felt hopeless, but he pressed on. He made his way back to the log. This time, anger and frustration helped him ignore the slime and the possibly impending fungal infections. This time, he didn't take any chances, gripping the log and laying on his stomach as he slowly shimmied up the log until he was at the top. Finally, he exhaled and checked his energy. Energy 24/30. Looking around, it dawned on him that he had to jump down the other side, and seeing no logs to get down, he decided he would walk along the log looking for a pond to jump in. He didn't want to risk a sprained ankle and being surrounded by monsters. Pausing for a moment, he first took in the view. The marsh went on for as far as he could see. Although it was humid, thick dark clouds hung overhead, placing the whole landscape in shadows. Thankfully, he spotted movement nearby. Approaching slowly, he walked along the log, then slid himself off the side on his belly till he fell onto the ground. He didn't have the luxury of jumping into a pond as that would have alerted the rats, so he decided to take the risk. Happily, he didn't take any damage, though his chest was covered in decaying wood and moss, not that it mattered at this point. He was filthy. Jay walked into some nearby swamp grass and crouched. He blended in almost seamlessly since he was practically covered in half of the swamp by now. He pulled out his cooking knife and made his way to where he saw the movement. Stealthily sneaking through the waist-high reeds and swamp grasses, he approached the source of the movement. Through the swaying reeds, Jay finally saw it, his first monster. His first victim. My Necromancer Class Chapter 5, Research. Asterisk author here. This is a 5,100-word chapter. Normally they're about 1,200 words, so get comfortable and expect a long read for this one. Thanks. Aero 182 asterisk. As Jay approached the oblivious Sobrat, he realized he couldn't really make use of his Necromancer class since there were no corpses around, only rotting wood and swamp grass. I guess I'll have to do this the old-fashioned way, smiling slightly as he equipped his one-damaged cooking knife. Squinting, he clenched his jaw a little as he held his knife as he prepared himself mentally. He imagined he was like an assassin hunting his prey, thinking of himself as being much cooler than what he actually was, a person covered in slimy shit, holding a cooking knife in the middle of a swamp, about to ambush a fat rat. He looked more like a homeless person looking for dinner. Inspect, he thought, gazing at the rat with predator-like eyes. Less than, soap rat level 1, greater than. 10 HP. Less than, skills, greater than. Slippery, passive. The rat uses swamp slime to its advantage. Crowd control skills have no effect. Bite. 1 pierce damage. Claw. Bleed 2 flat damage over 3 seconds, can stack 2 times. Poison resist, passive. 80% poison resistance. Less than, description, greater than. While the name suggests that it may be clean, it is the furthest thing from it. The rat's large, about the size of a pig, but with a slender body and a long tail. Thought Jay. It was covered completely in a slimy sheen of black fur. Studying it, Jay was in the process of sizing up his prey. It's hardly a rat, more like a mutant dog. A large muscular head was sticking out from the rest of its body. Shit, it could easily crush a pumpkin between those jaws. Trying his best to be stealthy, as good as a level 2 necromancer can be, he was sneaking over as the rat appeared to be distracted while eating something. Its choice of snack appeared to be decaying wood, causing Jay to pity the oversized rat. Sneaking ever so closer, Jay wiped the grime off his cooking knife and held it in a reverse grip, preparing himself mentally. Kill or be killed, he thought to himself. Sure, Jay could have just left, but in his eyes, returning to a mundane life was as good as being dead. Now was the time. Stepping forward and then jumping with the grace of a pregnant elephant, Jay broke cover, pouncing at the rat while stabbing down as hard as he could. Unfortunately, his prey reacted in time. It turned to its side and hissed as Jay's knife left a deep gash on its ribs. A damage number appeared over the rat. 1. The rodent hopped back and then used its momentum to plant its paws in the ground and leap, pouncing at Jay's right hand. Jay pulled his wrist back and slashed at the rat's face, leaving a gash across its snout. 1. The rat screeched as it leapt at Jay again, slashing back at him with its own knife-like claws. Jay braced himself and held his breath. He raised his arms up into a boxer stance with the bloodied knife gleaming in his right hand. The rat's claws gashed down his arms. Jay successfully protected his head and torso, but deep cuts on his arms began to bleed. Jay dropped the knife from the pain as his arms were turning red. Ah! You bastard! Jay clenched his jaw as his anger and adrenaline helped to dull the pain. You were bleeding. 0.7 damage per second for 3 seconds. You were bleeding. 0.7 damage per second for 3 seconds. A double fucking bleed. Kicking and stomping at the rat's head a few times in frustration, Jay forced it to back up. This was Jay's first fight, and it wasn't long into it before he realized that he needed to be a bit more tactical. He picked up the knife, preparing to dodge and counter-attack the rat's next attack. Jay taunted it, come. Stress response, passive, activated. Plus 5% melee damage. Nice, smiled Jay with a predator-like grin. The rat lunged and snapped, but Jay backstepped and stabbed at the rat's head. Take this bitch. Planting the knife right onto the rat's head, it didn't penetrate the skull, but thankfully still did damage. -1. Unfortunately, Jay's damage was not high enough to factor in the extra 5% melee damage. The rat was aggravated from the attack and went savage. It knew it was kill or be killed. It didn't let Jay pause, continuing to attack. Its survival instincts completely kicked in. While its head was still numb, it didn't retreat as an intelligent creature would have. Stepping forward, it sunk its teeth into Jay's leg. Grr! Jay released a primal, guttural roar from the pain as he clenched his teeth. He was almost falling over as his leg was being pinned down and gnawed at, the rat's head shaking as it tried to remove a piece of flesh. -1. -1. Ah shit. Losing 3 health all at once, Jay's blood boiled with rage. Fucker. Responding with his own survival instinct, Jay went into overdrive and stabbed down repeatedly as his life depended on it, his vision going red while stabbing the rat like a maniac. -1. -1. Grrrh. He made a barbarian noise, still stabbing at the rat. The knife was now completely red after finding purchase in its flesh. Shaving away more health from the rat, it began to die. Loosening its grip, it stopped shaking its head. Jay grabbed its fur and continued to stab but only got his hand covered in slime. Nevertheless, he continued stabbing in a mad frenzy. Just die you fuck. -1. 15 express. The rat had died at this point, but Jay continued. He wasn't keeping track of the rat's health. All he knew at that moment was he needed to stab to survive. He stabbed more but began to slow down, the pain stopping as he realized the rat was dead. He let out a sigh. Finally, Jay checked his arms for damage, but they were completely healed up. I guess my HP went down instead of me taking actual damage. Though I do feel a strange sense of weakness after losing all that health. Panting at this point, he took a few deep breaths in. Calming himself, he began to feel accomplished. Tough rat, Jay exhaled as he showed the dead soap rat some respect. You sure wanted to keep your life, huh? He shook the slime off his hand, slippery little bastard. Finally catching his breath, he decided it was finally time to practice his mana craft. Holding out a hand over the corpse, Jay chanted his spell. Rise. Again, Jay felt a little lightheaded as green gas materialized around his hand and spread around the creature. He didn't realize this before since it was daytime, but the gas was luminescent. Cool, said Jay as the green glowing light reflected off his pupils. He seemed like a true necromancer as he watched the beautiful dancing gas, yet this magical moment was cut short as when the gas penetrated the creature and disappeared, its body starting to spasm. Jay's eyes bulged, realizing the rat corpse was about to explode and flick little bits of flesh all over his face. No. Not again. Never again. Jay gritted his teeth as he sprinted to the nearest log, jumping behind it. Tilda pua, tilda. The corpse exploded. All Jay heard was a muffled explosion followed by a light rain from the other side of the log. Smiling behind the log, Jay waited an extra moment after the rain noise stopped. Nope, I'm gonna wait. There are probably still some smaller bits of flesh raining down that I can't hear. He still shuddered at the thought of what happened last time, vividly remembering it. Peeking his head over the log, he was happy that he missed getting a face full of gore. Viscera, organs, intestines, black fur, unidentifiable flesh and fatty residue was left all over. It temporarily changed this part of the marsh from black-grey to a deep crimson red. It was probably the only part of the marsh that wasn't black. The green gas forcefully expelled all the flesh from the rat corpse, leaving only the bones. It seeped into the bones as they rattled, cartilage popped and snapped as other bones began sticking to each other and floating. A solid dark green cartilage was forming at the joints. The bones began to assemble and form a humanoid body with a hunchback. However, this time it was slightly bigger, about the same height as the soap rat. The last part to move into place was the massive soap rat skull. Still gleaming with blood and interstitial fluid, it found its home at the top of the creature. It didn't morph into the same humanoid goblin-shaped head that it did before. It seems like the rat skull was sufficient for its purposes, yet two small horns still formed at the top of the skull. Jay analyzed it while it was self-constructing. It appeared to have a much smaller amount of the dark green material making up the skeleton and filling in the missing gaps. Perhaps it was smaller before because there were less bones to form it. After it self-constructed, Jay received a notification. Chimera Research 1%. Chimera. Jay was confused, and pondered, I've only heard stories of such creatures. I thought they were myths. An evil grin appeared on Jay's face. I can't wait to make a freaky-looking abomination with tentacles, scorpion stingers, antlers and scales. They will tell tales of its horror. Mwahahaha. Laughing alone in the black marsh, he truly seemed like a psychopath. But why did I get this research? Jay inspected the creature. Less than, feeble creature level 1, greater than. 10 HP. Base damage, 1. Less than, skills, greater than. Bite. 1 pierce damage. Claw. Bleed 2 flat damage over 3 seconds, can stack 2 times. Undeath, passive. Immune to cold, poison, bleed, hunger, stress, fear, pain. Less than, description, greater than. An abomination, its existence spits in the face of life and death. Execute with extreme prejudice. Nope, nothing out of the ordinary. The status gave him no clues as to why he gained Chimera Research, but he was more surprised at the description. Wow, execute. That's not very nice, but I suppose it makes sense. Jay shrugged. Anything that messes with a corpse is probably detestable to nature, say the least. He looked at his own hands. Wait, what does that say about me? Jay frowned. He didn't want to be a necromancer, but this was his lot in life. Reasoning with himself, he made a decision. I won't raise a human corpse, that's where I draw the line. Unless it's an emergency and they were utter scum. Then maybe I won't feel as if I'm the abomination. Yeah, no one is forcing me to be evil after all. He sighed looking at his new companion. Seems like you have the same skills as the rat. Well, except the slippery passive since your slimy fur exploded, but I'm not complaining. Before he planned his next steps, he looted the remains of the corpse. Fur scraps, X3. Marsh bones, X2. Soap rat teeth, X3. I probably can't do much with these. Maybe I can sell them to that fat merchant. What was his name again? Be something. Hey, I'll just examine him next time I see him. Jay realized he should probably learn the merchant's name at least. All he remembered was his smoking, his moustache, and his weight. Though this wasn't very specific, most merchants and nobles were overweight in this world. Obesity was not frowned upon at all, but instead. It was among gold and jewelry as sign of luxury and success. Its symbolism was attractive to some, though it wasn't for everyone. Looking at the marsh bones, Jay wondered why there were bones left over after he raised the creature to Undeath. The bones were blackened, slimy and damp. Evidently, they have been decaying here for years. Then realization dawned on him. The rat was eating these bones, and not some decaying black wood as he initially thought. It turns out even bones are not immune to the blackened stain of the stink rat marsh. Jay realized what happened after he summoned the rat. So combining bones of different creatures does make a difference. Though you did still turn out as the same creature, it seems like I may discover another skill eventually. Man, being a necromancer is so cool, he chuckled to himself, shaking his head in disbelief as he started talking to his new companion now that no one else was around. But with the marsh bones from another soaprat or another creature entirely. Seems like I'll need to do more testing before I jump to conclusions. Starting to feel pain as his anger died down, Jay checked his status. Less than, Necromancer level 2, greater than. HP, 43/48. MP, 34/39. Strength, 15. Dexterity, 25. Vitality, 15. Energy, 24/30. EXP, 15/150. Less than, skills, greater than. Raise feeble creature level 1, 1/1 raised. Stress response, passive. Running level 1, passive. I'm not too banged up, said Jay, looking at his health before glancing at his minion. At least you can protect me now on. The creature moved over to stand in front of Jay, as if waiting for orders, its green glowing eyes gazing at him. Jay ignored it, standing up and gazing at the marshland around him. He posited, this will be easy now that I have a summon. Jay took out his water bottle from his knapsack and used it to wash his hands. He took a drink and then began eating some wild nuts. Probably too early to treat myself, but I should keep my energy up. Noticing his bond tussle roots as he was grabbed more nuts, oh yeah. He popped a root into his mouth, chewed and swallowed it, getting a notification. Mana regen buff 1%. Lasts for 1 hour. Eyes squinting over the marshland grass, he looked at his surroundings as he put his water bottle away. He seemingly looked like a giant as he peered over the surrounding waist-high grass. The wind paused for a moment and the grass stopped swaying, all except for a patch which seemed to be getting closer. It must have heard me fighting. Looking at his creature, he wondered if he should name it for the sake of practicality. Don, prepare to fight. The creature, now called Don, looked confused for a while, perhaps even angry as its new name had no thought put into it. It even seemed to scowl at Jay before assuming a fighting stance to make best use of its claws. Having similar stats to the soaprats, Don had one main advantage to tip the scales in its favor. Don was an undead biped. Sure enough, another pig-sized soaprat came to investigate the shouting. Parting the grasses, it glared at Jay and Don. Jay examined it. Soaprat level 1. Having a smug grin, Jay spat on the ground as he death stared at the rat and provoked the rat in a deeper voice. Do something. The rat took a few steps forward, hissing, as the rest of its body slipped through and exited the grasses. Surprisingly, Don pounced at the rat, immediately responding to the rat's intention to fight. Before the rat could respond, Don's teeth were already sinking into its flesh. Don shook its skull head from side to side to rend the flesh, while its skeleton claws were just as damaging, slashing at the rat and digging them into its flesh. The rat didn't hiss, but squealed. It was in immense pain. Conversely, Don didn't make any sound, perhaps because Don had no voice box, though Don appeared to be bored. Jay gasped as he subconsciously took a step back, being shocked at how savagely Don was fighting. The rat tried to shake Don off, but only made its pain greater as it propelled Don to rip a chunk of flesh out of its shoulder. Don was flung on the ground with a chunk of flesh in its mouth as its prize, while Jay stepped forward and stabbed at Rat. It then died after suffering only 1 damage from Jay. 15 Express. Jay was completely surprised. Wow, you did 9 damage. You're an absolute savage, he praised Don, amazed as he gathered the loot from the soaprat corpse. Fur scraps, X2. Soaprat teeth, X3. Man, that was the easiest kill ever. I barely had to do anything. I probably could get away with ignoring the fight entirely while cleaning the dirt from my fingernails, Jay said with a proud little smile. Looking at his blade, it had begun to dull and the point had chipped off. Hope these fur scraps are worth something. Maybe I can get a better knife or something. Don gazed back at Jay with its hollow green eyes as it swallowed the flesh out of a natural reflex. Jay gave Don a puzzled look as the flesh left Don's empty skull, slid down Don's spine and plopped out on the ground nearby, Don seemingly not noticing anything unusual. Haha, you're weird, Jay chuckled as he began looking for movement in the marsh. Failing to see anything, he began walking in the direction the last rat had come from. It took a few minutes before the unlikely duo came to a small clearing within the reeds and grasses. The dirty homeless-looking man and a waist-high hunchback humanoid skeleton with a huge rat skull entered the clearing. Alone in the middle of the clearing was a slightly fatter rat sprawled across a log, uncaringly surveying the duo. The rat seemed to be an alpha in these parts of the marsh, having its own little territory marked out. To Jay, it seemed like a battle-hardened warrior. As Jay and Don approached, it lazily stretched and jumped down from its log as if this was a common occurrence. Jay squinted, examining the confident soaprat. Less than, soaprat level 3, greater than. 15 HP. Less than, skills, greater than. Slippery, passive. The rat uses swamp slime to its advantage. Crowd control skills have no effect. Bite. 3 pierce damage. Claw. bleed 4 flat damage over 4 seconds, can stack 3 times. Poison resist, passive, 80%. This is gonna be a harder one, Don. Wait till it attacks, then we strike. Jay, Don, and the rat each went into their respective combat stances. Each party waited for the other to strike first, the rat seeming to know some basic strategy. Circle around behind it, draw its attention. The rat tried to back up as it switched focus between Jay and Don, still in the process of encircling it. Realizing its predicament and pouncing at Don, it hoped to kill the smaller one quickly so it could 1v1 Jay. The rat bit down onto Don's collarbone and shook its head, immobilizing its right arm. -3. -1. Don took no notice of the pain as it happily bit back at the rat's neck and started rhythmically clawing it and shaking his head. -5. Ha, big mistake. Jay smiled as he stabbed down at the rat's back. Critical hit 2 damage. Since Jay was so low level, the critical hit seemed like nothing, but he was happy with the preceding notification. Dagger proficiency level 1, acquired. Plus 2% damage when using daggers. Plus 2% speed when using daggers. Can backstab for double damage. Not having time to enjoy the upgrade, Jay stabbed at the rat's back and ribs to kill it faster and saved Don. -2. -2. -2. Meanwhile the rat continued to bite Don, damage numbers appearing over his creature's head. -3. -3. Don's HP depleted quickly, but still clawed one last time at the rat, stacking one last bleed on it. -1. The rat died through a backstab from Jay before another damage tick from the bleed could kill it. 40 EXP. Damn, that rat had so much damage. Looks like I'll need to find another place to take cover and heal. Jay looked towards the log throne before turning to the bones and the level 3 soap rat corpse. Looting the corpse, he got 5 more fur scraps and 3 rat teeth before he placed the corpse over Don's bone pile, then held out his hand. Rise. Sprinting to the log and jumping over it, he took a moment to rest, having some more wild nuts and water as he waited for the explosion and round to clear. Chimera research 2%. Sweet, 1% closer to shocking the world, Jay joked to himself. Jay had grown used to talking to himself. Sadly he had been alone for the last few years as his father, Frank, was setting up another butchery in a nearby village. While his mother had died shortly after he was born, raised in the butcher shop, he worked with his dad and learned the trade. He knew his father cared for him, but he never talked much, and Jay was the same. After giving him the whole shop, he left for another city, promising to return after his second business was up and running, though this resulted in Jay being alone. His only communication with the local hunters and customers, and most of the time it was either empty small talk or price haggling. At first he was sad thinking about this, but he came to accept it, and eventually embraced it. While he didn't have anyone to talk to, he still had things to say. As Don reconstructed, 2 more rats entered the clearing. They were both level 1, so Jay wasn't worried. He controlled Don to kill one as he went for the other. Confident in fighting the rats now, Jay waited for it to attack. As it lunged, Jay sidestepped and stabbed at its neck. The rat screeched as Jay continued to stab at it, not giving the rat a chance to retaliate. He didn't stop for a second. All that mattered was doing damage before it could retaliate. The rat managed to claw at Jay once, causing 2 damage in total before it died. 15 Express. Jay looked over to Don's fight. The rat was bleeding out as Don was prepared to counterattack. Though before it could attack, it died, succumbing to its double bleed debuff. 15 Express. Oh, I must be getting close to leveling up, thought Jay, checking his experience. EXP, 110 150ths. Close, only about 3 more and I can level up. Jay wanted to grin, but he was tired. He began to appreciate the hard work that went into being an adventurer, realizing it requires perseverance and discipline to get results. He felt completely normal even though his energy level was dwindling. It was 24 30ths before the last 3 fights, now it was a measly 12 30ths. Deciding to take a moment to rest, he quickly looted the 2 dead rats, gaining 4 more fur scraps and 6 more teeth. However, this time he gained a stink rat tail, too. I'll check it out later. Walking over to the same log that the level 3 rat was relaxing on, Jay gave orders to Don before sitting down. Protect me. Don entered a fighting stance and began circling around Jay, peering around the small clearing. Sitting in a cross-legged position, mimicked the Manacraft trainer, closed his eyes and began thinking about the advice he committed to memory, while also guessing and filling in the parts with his best guess. While also keeping in mind that some of it was similar to that fortune-telling, carrot card, bullshit. Yes, carrot card. Jay never paid him enough attention to be corrected. Imagine a mana rope flowing from the gentle river of mana, pull it into your mind, make it a part of you. Jay began to sense the ambient mana. Fuzzy was the only way he could describe it. Attempting to form it into a rope, his effort was in vain. At most, it would be like the swaying grasses on the marsh. Of course, he wouldn't get it in the first 10 minutes, so he kept concentrating and changed his approach. Imagine a deep well, at the bottom of the mana river, sucking in and filling up all ambient mana. He felt the mana coalescing and moving and forming a slightly more dense spot. I'm doing it, yes, Jay thought. He distracted himself with his excitement and the spot became slightly less dense. He recovered his focus and imagined the bottom of the well moving into his body. Suddenly, he felt full, not full in the stomach sense, but more like he was full of energy. Maintaining his composure, he continued to channel the ambient mana into his body. The extra energy began to make his forehead sweat as he started to rock back and forth. It was an hour before he stopped. Checking his energy, he was pleased with himself, as it took great concentration to get more energy back. Energy, 18/30ths. So about 100 push-ups is equivalent to 1 energy. Meditating 1 hour gives 6 energy 1 per 10 minutes. Jay proceeded to calculate how much longer he needed to meditate to get to full energy, though he decided to only get to 29/30ths energy in case some sort of accident happened. He had no clue what would happen if someone meditated while their energy was full. Would they pop like a balloon? Jay meditated for the next hour and 50 minutes. As Jay was meditating, another Sobrat attacked, though it was easily killed by Don. Jay was able to stay in his meditation state. 15 Express. Finishing meditation, Jay was pleased with Don as he saw another corpse. Only 2 more rats and I can level up. Smiling, he jumped down from the log, looted the fresh corpse for another 2 fur scraps and 3 teeth, then made his way through the marsh. Approaching another clearing, he noticed a lot of movement this time. Crouching, he crept towards it, the clearing coming into sight. There were 5 level 1 Sobrats. Doing some quick calculations and planning, Jay thought he could beat them. They would take out 2 quickly, leaving only 3 vs 2. Jay knew he could tank some damage from 2 of the rats while Don killed another, resulting in a 2 vs 2 which they would easily win. Jay thought this was either the most genius or most idiotic idea he could come up with. Nevertheless, he implemented it. Jumping at the closest rat, he backstabbed it 3 times, dealing 6 damage before it could retaliate, biting his calf muscle as he continued to stab its neck area. -2. It counted as a backstab even though he wasn't directly behind it. Perhaps it was the anatomical difference. He was still stabbing its back after all. Don jumped at another rat and did his thing, biting, clawing and rending flesh. The other 3 rats jumped and hissed, startled by the ambush. They didn't respond at first due to shock, but soon attacked, defending their comrades. Jay was fighting 3 rats at once. He ignored the pain and stabbed the last rat in the throat to end it. -2. 15 Express. Don likewise killed his first rat and began to work on the second. 15 Express. As Jay proceeded to fight 2 rats, he leveled up. Ignoring the notification, he fought tactically to preserve energy and health. As they lunged, he dodged backwards and either stabbed them necks or slashed them on their heads. Both rats lost 3 health each before their survival instincts kicked in and they rushed Jay. They charged at him, intending to bite. Jay slammed his heel down onto one rat and jumped over the other one, plunging his knife into its lower torso. The rat squealed as Jay pulled out his knife. Its liver was executed. Not giving the rat any chances, he continued to stab. -2. The rat only had 3 health left before its mate could jump and claw at Jay. You were bleeding. 0.7 health per second for 3 seconds. Accepting the pain, Jay kept stabbing like a madman. -2. Stress response, activated plus 5% melee damage. -3. The rat died as it squealed to death. 15 Express. Jay had 1 more rat to kill. Looking across the clearing, Don was halfway through the second rat. The skeleton's teeth holding onto another piece of flesh. Jay played with his last rat, tactically dodging as he waited for Don to cull its rat. Not attacking, Jay kept being defensive and backstepping as the rat got frustrated. 15 Express. Don finished off its rat and came over to attack Jay's last rat. It took only a few seconds before the last rat was dead, riddled with knife holes and scratches. Anyone would feel sorry for it. 15 Express. The fight was finally over. Jay kept his guard up as he looked around. Holding his knife in a reverse grip as he panted, sweat covering his arms, he didn't see any enemies nearby. The surrounding marsh had a few decaying logs around it along with a few piles of reeds and grasses that seemed to be dried out. Relaxing for a moment, Jay checked his notifications. He had 5 attribute points, but was surprised to find that he had 1 skill point. Awesome, he grinned widely. Since I only have 1 skill, Raise Feeble Creature, I may as well upgrade it, and I'll dump the attribute points into Vitality so I can take more hits. Jay checked his stats. Less than, Necromancer level 3, greater than. HP, 52/58. MP, 35/39. Strength, 15. Dexterity, 25. Vitality, 20. Energy, 26/30. EXP, 23/75. Less than, skills, greater than. Raise Feeble Creature level 2, 1/2 raised. Stress response, passive. Running level 1, passive. Opening the Feeble Creature skill, he found more detailed information. Less than, raise feeble creature level 2, greater than. Cast on the corpse of a small creature, raising it to fight for you. Damage, 1 to 2. Life, 15. 2 feeble creature total. Mana cost, 5. Must be cast on a small corpse or nothing will happen. Jay was elated. Haha, no way, I can have 2 now. That's so overpowered. Immediately, Jay walked to another corpse, holding his hand over it and cast his spell. Raise, before running over to a nearby decaying trunk. Waiting a few moments, he realized it was a great skill, but each creature didn't upgrade very much, having 5 additional health and the possibility of 1 extra damage. Oh well, it's still awesome, being able to do nothing while my minions kill everything. Maybe one day I'll be able to stroll through a war zone looting corpses as intense warfare rages on around me. Hey, Jay let out a gleeful smile. Well, I guess this is gonna be easier than I thought. Imagine having to actually do stuff to level up. Jay laughed to himself. Don looked at Jay in confusion, probably not understanding what laughter was, then glanced at the new minion. Oh, right, Jay said with a devilish smile. Let me make introductions. Don, this is Don. You are both named Don. Ha 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 ha. Don. Jay laughed loudly, almost uncaringly in the stink rat swamp. He thought this was a joke that transcended the cosmic plane, even touching on the ranks of being a godlike joke, yet he was the only one laughing, alone in a swamp, still covered in mud, blood and shit. Anyone who saw him would think he was a psychopath. After taking far too long to calm down because of a mediocre joke, he planned his next steps. I'll hit level 4 and then leave this shithole, perhaps head back to town and buy a dagger, then depending on the time, I'll make my way to Wolf's Quarry. It's not set in stone, but I'll see how it plays out. With a spring in his step, he looted the 5 rat corpses for 10 fur scraps and 15 rat teeth as he dodged the new patch of organs and flesh staining the used to be black marsh. Man, I'm gonna need a jar for all these teeth. Ugh, this is disgusting. Some of the teeth were blackened and smelly. Oh well, time waits for no one. Looking around, he spotted another clearing. He began to solemnly walk towards it, with his dons leading the way.